Before I say how frustrating it was watching Suicide Squad, getting this out there, I had a good time those first 15 minutes that I felt during Superman vs. Batman, where I knew, wow, dear God, this is going to be a nightmare to get through, never showed up. That said, let's talk about top 5 of the cringiest things in Suicide Squad. Also, spoilers. Number 5, the evil mooks. Remember those putties from Power Rangers growing up? Now make them CGI. Just some lifeless monsters that the Suicide Squad has to fight. There are times during these fights where I might as well be watching a Let's Play from Steam Greenlight. And somehow everything that the Suicide Squad does to fight these guys is more effective than, say, trained soldiers with military weapons. Which would be fine if everyone on the Suicide Squad were superhumans, but Harley, Deadshot, Captain Boomerang do seem to be normal Joe Schmoes for the most part. Number 4, the Enchantress and her brother. Again, spoilers, the evil villain in this movie, oddly enough, is because of Suicide Squad existing in the first place. The most powerful member goes rogue and tries to end the world. And at first, the Enchantress is creepy as hell. She has world-ending powers, and the biggest problem? She's more powerful than the rest of the team combined. She's able to warp reality at lengths that bends the suspension of disbelief, and why someone like Amanda Waller ever thought this was a good idea to try and control this, is beyond me. There's a moment at the end of the movie where she winds up making the remark, "You don't have the balls." It comes off as flat out of what was supposed to be a creepy world-ending demon. And then there's her brother, because what comic book doesn't have a sub-boss who's just barely above mindless, dumb as a brick, and has tentacles? Number 3, Diablo turning into an Aztec god, demon, or whatever. I felt like I was watching Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat the movie from back in the day, when this was acceptable. Diablo was, for the most part, well enough developed and enjoyable character, and his powers were badass. He had just the right amount of apprehension about using them, despite being evil as fuck. But when he turned into this fire entity thing, I never felt more aware that I was watching a crappy comic book movie. Number 2, Ben Affleck in the credits. I was prepared to give Ben a mulligan after Batman vs. Superman because that whole thing was a train wreck. But it never became more grossly aware that this dour, cunty man will never make this character anything more than depressing. Is that a characteristic for Batman? Sure, but in a world where you need to bounce this man off the Justice League and the villains, that including Ben's personality is much less a promise and more a threat. I thank God this movie had as little Batman as humanly fucking possible. After watching a movie that was a step in the right direction, I can't help but feel threatened that old Bat Affleck will be waiting to drag this down to the DC Universe standard. Jesus Christ. Jared Leto's performance as the Joker was about as bad, but this was his first bite at the apple, and he was barely there. Number 1, Captain Boomerang. I want to be totally fair, you may ask, really, you thought he was the worst? Captain Boomerang is the perfect symbol of throwing crap against the wall in this movie and seeing what sticks. I mean, even his backstory, he's a bank robber, feels kinda out of place. The super jail he winds up going to hardly seems to fit. Why does Captain Boomerang qualify for this in the first place? And then there's the repeated unicorn plushie joke, where he keeps hiding under his coat. It's like the writing was trying to quip from Deadpool or something, using the biggest loser in the group. Moreover, how is Captain Boomerang a super bank robber? I'm not saying he can't be, but fuck if the movie explains it. It just tells us he is. Oh sure, he's robbing a bank at one point, but there's nothing to suggest his boomerangs make him amazing at it. He's a sneaky bastard who tricks one of his teammates into getting themselves killed, but then comes along for the ride at the end, because there's naturally much more than Boomerang that flubs like this in this movie, but he's a fine example of the movie dropping the ball. The upsides? Well, Will Smith as Deadshot is a blast, so much so that I think we would have been better off to have had Deadshot the movie. I mean, seriously, seeing this guy blow away gangsters, snitches, military, or what have you would have been a lot better than CGI villains. By the time this movie was over, I had gotten used to Harley Quinn, and she mostly carries Jared Leto for the time being. Amanda Waller does her job, but kinda overstays her usefulness. I've never been one for the whole outlaw star, Firefly, Cowboy Bebop theme of the heroes or anti-heroes, or the protagonists risking their life and limb, only to end up back at square one, when after everything is said and done. Amanda Waller survives in one piece because there's no reason why. A demon Amanda tries to kill has Waller at its total mercy, and Amanda makes it to the credits. I mean, she's not even missing some fingers, an eye, a leg, a toe. A several thousand-year-old demon manages to pry into her mental, deepest, darkest thoughts, everything that it needs from Amanda, and she's left alive after her usefulness is at an end. The contrivancy happens so that the movie can railroad the main cast into a sequel. But for me again, because this was a massive step forward from Batman vs Superman, and believe me, this would have been a failing effort without the bar set so low. Not to mention the fact that the powers that be, when they have their way, the sequel, my dear friends, will make us look back at this Suicide Squad as the good old days.